We got a lot planned for tonight, and we're live. We're on the StineItch channel, and let's just head on over to the gameplay, shall we? I was gonna say tonight was the 14th day of Christmas, but it's not. Um, that would be wishful thinking. Christmas has 13 days. It used to have 12, and then it received 13. I explained about that in my broadcast the other night. And last night we celebrated on my broadcast the 13th day of Christmas. And today would be the 14th day, except it's not. There's not 14 days of Christmas. But for those of you who like the Christmas season and, celebration of this time of year, today is the day of the three Magi's. In a lot of different lands and cultures, they're doing that today. And you can adopt that as your own if you like. Um, I think it's not a bad idea. I don't know why we can't do that. Um, anyway, we're going to be broadcasting tonight, and we don't necessarily have to be broadcasting in celebration of anything, but it's kind of fun. Everybody had like a lot of fun during Christmas here on my channel, just chilling back, watching the brainwaves. They are right up there. You can see them. Delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. We got everything up there. They are registered in this band. It's called a Muse 2, and they go through a gel. There's a special gel that I put between that and my head, and then they're captured there and they're sent to my cell phone. My cell phone has a special software called Mind Monitor, developed by a guy named James Clatterback, who helped me get it all set up. And it's like everything's working fine. Then they're broadcast from the cell phone into the Twitch through an interface called Screen Stream over HTTP. And you won't find, a better setup. I mean, maybe you might, but it took me a long time to find how to do it. Took a long, but they're there and they're working. It's quite amazing. I'm just gonna move my chessboard over a little bit. I don't know why it's like out of position here. Let me see. Is that better? Um, I don't know. It's okay. It's kind of like a weird position. It shows. It's okay. Why not? It's kind of like shows a little bit of my background there and everything, but I guess it. Oh, I know why. Because I'm still in the save mode. Okay. Oh, hey, you're here. Okay, so cool. Already got chatters. Um, let's see what's going on here. Yeah, it was pretty expensive to tell you the truth. Expensive for me, before I got into, became a Twitch broadcaster and rolling in the big bucks and everything. It was pretty expensive for me. I think this band, if I remember right, it cost like $200. And it does not come with the My Monitor software. You got to buy that separate. Um, that's not bad. That's only like $16.95, something like that, and you get it for a lifetime. Because I got a new cell phone recently, and I was able to download it into the new cell phone. And the brainwaves are actually a lot clearer in the new cell phone. So yeah, every day, every day is Christmas. There's a book about that where they wake up and every day is Christmas, and the guy kind of like figures out that he's in a computer simulation because, hey, Mr. Zorro is here. Really cool guy from Serbia. Nice to see you here. We got a lot planned here for you tonight. The games that you guys see up there on the screen right now was played in Mel del Prato. No, Plata, right? Mel del Plata. My Spanish is horrible. Anyway, it's a district of Buenos Aires, and it was played in 1960 when Bobby Fischer was he was really young. He was born in 1943. So he would have been 17 years old. Spassky was 6 years older than him, so he would have been 23. And Spassky played this. This is a King's Gambit accepted, and Bobby Fischer was really great at those, but lost. Oh, and as a little trivia thing, um, Spassky won this tournament. Fischer came in second precisely for losing this game as black because Spassky had a bunch of wins and zero losses. He had wins and draws. And Bobby Fischer had a bunch of wins, bunch of draws, and he lost this one game. And that's what put him in second place. So without any more ado, what do you say? You guys excited about this? Let's go over here and look into this game. And my brainwaves are on display. As we're going through the game, you might take a close look at the delta waves, especially because they register really high when I'm getting an insight. So even when I'm not playing, sometimes if we're reviewing an interesting game, you're going to see some delta wave action up there. Okay, so here it goes. Two world champions, some of the best. Sometimes people say Fischer was the very best ever in chess. Spassky too was very, very good. A world champion, and he beat Fischer in this game. So let's click through it and see how it is. This is the King's Gambit accepted. And if you look down here on the stockfish, you can see it was a very, 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 very consistent game. Nobody making any big mistakes or anything. The score right here actually is one blunder by Fischer. And we'll take a look at that, why he would blunder at that point. And Boris Spassky had no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders after, like that move right there, the second move. Um, this Stockfish rates King's Gambit move as inaccuracy. But after that, Spassky doesn't have any inaccuracy, so I think this was a very instructive game to watch. If you want to know how to play a King's Gambit, watch how Spassky develops this. This is a safe move. It prevents the queen from coming out and making the check, which can be a little bit problematic. This is a very, very common move, attacking the position of the knight there. And that's an extremely, extremely common move. It's the one recommended by Stockfish and everything. It's not really to attack this pawn. What it does is it brings your rook into play because this queen is constantly threatening to come out onto this square. And now you see the rook is already covering that square, covering it through the pawn. Yeah, at that time they didn't have anything like Stockfish. They had computers back then in 1960, but they were big ones. They didn't have personal computers. You just had big ones for banks and some insurance companies and maybe the military or something and researchers. Yeah, this is amazing level playing. This is just amazing. Okay, so he comes out here to develop his rook, and 3 nights ago we were analyzing a game by Philidor, one of the very first known players in chess, like way back in the 1700s, and he was very good at the King's Gambit too. So this is like a really traditional and great and great and actually it's a great opening. I recommend it wholeheartedly. So the pawn comes up attacking the knight. The knight's got to get out of there, and this is a good square for it because it's attacking this pawn. And Fischer comes out defending his pawn, and once again you can see black still has the advantage mainly because he took the pawn, but he doesn't have a full pawn's advantage. Um, So actually, white still has some positional advantage. He's a pawn down, but has some positional advantage. So Spassky, not wasting any time, he's going to come out here, defending his knight and also threatening to take this pawn. Now he could have taken this pawn, but it just leads to a lot of calculations. He's going to go for development more until he really comes out with his attack. Now Fischer dislodges the knight, and this is very interesting. A kind of a cheeky, classy move, however you'd call it. Instead of taking the, well, he can't take the pawn now anyway because I'm like a move behind. But okay, so he moved it back here, and now he's attacking this pawn. He's got the knight and the bishop attacking that pawn. So he's going to try to equalize, but actually he doesn't really care if he equalizes. White is playing here for a positional attack. Doesn't really care too much about the pawns. It is a gambit after way, right? After all. So now, black has got another pawn. But you see the brown line there. He didn't really go up and score because again, he's ahead in material. He's 2 pawns ahead. White has not taken any of his pawns, and he's taken 2 of white's. But um, he's still ahead only less than a pawn, according to Stockfish. Okay, so now Spassky comes out, gets one of his pawns back. Although, like I say, he's not really too concerned about the number of pawns right now. He's jockeying for an attack. Bishop Fischer trades off the knights. Looks like I don't think Spassky minded that at all because now he's got these 2 pawns lined up nicely against that bishop. Although Fischer now has something to say about that. He's going to come out here and attack this pawn, so the pawn's looking a little bit weaker. Spassky comes out, attacking this pawn. Not again like he wants to win a pawn necessarily, but he's got to develop that piece. He's got a castle, and why not train on the pawn? It's the only place that the bishop can actually go. So okay, now he castles. I did that quick. That was a pawn takes a pawn, then a castle. Fischer takes the time to get a knight out. They're both developing a pace. Rather than taking the bishop, black castled. Fischer takes the bishop because he wants to bring his queen out here. And black took with the rook, allowing Fischer to bring the queen out. The queen's looking pretty strong out here. Like if he comes here with his bishop, it's basically almost threatening a mate and everything. That's a good move because now if Spassky has to move his queen, he can't bring the bishop there so fast. And now if he brings the bishop down, Fischer can protect the bishop with any of the rooks or the queen. He brings his queen back. So right now all the pieces are in positions and everything, and rather than Fischer takes the moment to win back, get a little bit more material. He doesn't really have any way to enhance his position. So Spassky, however, can centralize a rook. Fischer gets his king out of the way out of the file of that queen. Spassky brings his king over there. To tell you the truth, I was looking over this game before the broadcast, and I couldn't figure out exactly why he did that. Maybe one of the viewers has some insight on that. And then, okay, so now that looks very strong by Fischer, lining up the rook against the queen. And now let me play that back so you see what happened. The bishop just comes down and takes the pawn. And that looks like a strong response, doesn't it? But you see that the graph hardly moved. This bishop came back, putting the question to this bishop, like what's that bishop going to do, and also attacking the queen at the same time. It looks really strong because you see if he moves his queen, then black gets the bishop, apparently. But let's see what Spassky has up his sleeve. Okay, so bishop comes back with a check. Knight takes the bishop. Queen takes the knight, puts black in check. Interposing with the rook, which is a very interesting move. You know, a lot of players would interpose with the bishop. It looks pretty strong, but according to this, it's a good move. Spassky is bringing more pieces out. He's got to have more attackers out here than just a queen. So he's activating his rook, which can come over or up or whatever. Now that it took that pawn on, cleared that pawn out of the way. And that's why I was wondering why he brought his bishop over there to begin with. Maybe to avoid this check somehow. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but his king was actually a little more vulnerable here, except it wasn't vulnerable along here. So he's got to bring his king back. Now look at that, threatening checkmate. And Spassky has to respond to that. And he has a good response. He brings back his rook that was looking a little bit vulnerable out there. He doesn't want to worry about that all the time. And this will free up his queen for more moves if he brings his rook back. It's an interesting move because the king is protecting the rook is protecting the pawn, and this check looks pretty dastardly. But you see the knight here. The knight is sitting there, and it's going to keep sitting there because it's protected by that pawn, and it might be hard for black to try to get that check in. Okay, so black moves his bishop out. This is a strong, strong, strong move, putting the question to the queen. You know, what's the queen going to do? You know, it could come over here, for example, you know, putting him in check, but then, you know, there's different resources that that white has to protect against there. Fischer at this point looks like, well, geez, you know, I'll just offer a trade to the queen. Your queen's looking pretty strong out there. Spassky has nothing of it. He's going to protect his queen from the trade. This rook comes over, and that, by the way, you see the double question mark. That was Fischer's big blunder. You can see how it went way up here because Spassky has like a totally strong response. Putting the question to the queen again. If this rook takes the rook, so then you just lose the queen without enough compensation. He's got to respond to this. Get the queen out of there. Instead of getting the queen out, he attacks white's queen. Okay, and white gets his queen out of danger, also attacking the bishop. So that's always a really good thing to think about when somebody's attacking you. If you can respond to their attack by attacking them, it's sometimes you don't have to move that piece. You could just attack, you know, with a stronger attack, leave the piece there. But in this case, he moves the queen out, but also gets a strong attack against the bishop. He brings the queen here, hoping for the trade. Yeah, the queen, exactly. This is a problem. The queen can't defend the bishop because it comes here. And now if Spassky takes the queen, the bishop they did a queen trade, and now the bishop is free. But Spassky has one more trick up his sleeve, which is to bring the rook there, interposing. The queen now has nowhere to go if it's going to continue to protect the bishop. If the queen goes here, keeping on the diagonal, this rook takes it. If the queen goes here, this rook takes it. And you can see that's the end of the game on here because Fischer resigned, and he hated to do that. If you didn't know anything about Fischer's personality, must have drove him crazy right at this point. I mean, that they didn't have these brainwave things back then, but it would have been interesting if we could have seen Fischer's brainwaves right at those last moves, especially after that blunder. They must have been really jumping around. So I hope you enjoyed that game. Did everybody enjoy that, or what? I mean, I'm just going to really quickly click through the very beginning moves because we want to cement this in your mind. People that like to play the King's Gambit, you can kind of like see what's happening here. I'm just going to click through fast because you can get the flow of the game. Just flowing this out according to what Bobby Fischer and Spassky were doing in Mar del Plata in 1960. And here we go. Great one. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that game. I thought it was a very high quality game. Um, and then right here at the end, the maneuvers of the queen and the rook the queens and rooks are very classic. And there you have it. That's the end. Okay, I guess that's enough chess classical instruction tonight. I hope you enjoyed that. And I think I'm going to look over here to see if I have any challenges on Lee Chess. I don't see any challenges there. So, oh yeah, send a game. Wow, we had a great game. I really was so thankful for Zorro. Um, I call Sat Kojak. Zorro because I think we figured out it could be a convenient nickname because Sat Kojak is kind of hard to pronounce, and I'm not even pronouncing that right. But if you can send a game, if you're not too much offended by me mispronouncing your name all the time, it would be a great contribution. I really enjoyed that game you sent the other night. That was it really was the most beautiful game in chess. Didn't you say that Kasparov said it was the most beautiful? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's play some. Let's play some chess. I'm gonna go over to Elite Chess and see what we can get. If we get white, we'll do the King's Gambit, and if we get black, we'll play like we always do, the Carol Can. I'm gonna play a casual game because they're always giving me hints, and in a casual game without a rating, that's okay. So let's go ahead and okay, we're gonna do this Carol Can thing. So I've been teaching this together with the King's Gambit just so that everybody knows how to do it. Now at this point, when a real Carol Cans, you very often bring the bishop out here, but in this case, I might be kind of weak on this side because of this pawn exchange. So I'm going to kind of like play it by ear here. I'm going to just castle my king and then decide what to do with my bishop. I think it's going to be safer. A lot of people like to protect this pin, but this knight really can't come over with that pawn there. So I like to bring the bishop out into a slightly more aggressive position. I would like to bring my queen and bishop into a battering ram position, but I can't yet because I want to develop this rook first. And let's see what white does now. This is going to be kind of interesting. Okay, white does a kind of a move with several intentions, perhaps. I'm going to get the bishop out of there and come up into a battering ram position and then see what happens. If he takes this and doubles my pawn, I'm not going to worry about that very much because I got the battering ram. I can move this pawn up. I can bring my king over, bring my rook over. And I don't see how he's really strong on that side over there. Okay, I'm going to get my queen out of there because I want to move this knight out. And see if he comes up there, I can already move the knight out. I'm going to mix this up. I got the battering ram already in position, and I'm going to see what happens. Attacking him there. I think I just won his queen, but that's could be my imagination. Sometimes some weird stuff happens and I don't even see it, and I think I'm winning and I'm not. Oh, wow, look at that. We did it. Oh, and again, the software kind of this software is a little bit. It's a great software, but I noticed that when I overwhelm it with a lot of brain waves, it does tend to flatline, and sometimes it does that at key moments for that, just for that reason. But you can see my delta up so high. Um, let's just go back to the analysis board and see how that was played. I'm just predicting, I felt that I wasn't making mistakes, but let's see. I might have made a bunch. I just thought that it was going according to plan. And it was going together plan, but I did some really bad things. Like the opening was perfect actually on both sides, and then we got into the middle game. I did some bad stuff because he kept getting an advantage, but then you see he didn't see it, and it kept going, like up and down, and then he made like a huge problem. So a huge blunder. So we'll click through that. We're going to be doing some intellectual training tonight, like I sometimes do. Those of you who follow my training, you'll remember what um, I remarked once about Spassky when he was going to play Fischer in Reykjavik am I saying that right? I don't know, but in Iceland, he was playing that like in the early 70s for the World Championship, and he said, well, he's a good chess player, but as a Russian trained Russian player, I have an advantage. We study literature, we study music, we study opera, we study history, we study all kinds of stuff, and we get a synergistic effect in our mind. And so I'm going to have a lot more resources, to win against this guy. And he had a point. He lost the world championship to Fischer, but he did have a point, and that's why we do some intellectual training. We're going to be reading the first two paragraphs of David Copperfield, so you get an idea of Charles Dickens' writing style and discussing that. But before we do that, let's do the post-mortem on this game. Um, clicking here. Yeah, oh, and of course, we're going to be reading that with the brainwaves because that's going to be very interesting too to see how the brainwaves work as we're moving through the sentences and discussing them. So here we go. Postmortem, and this was an actual game just played now in real time by myself on Lichess. And if you look at the brown line there, no mistakes on either side. This is just going really according to plan, no mistakes, no inaccuracies anywhere. I castle. He brings his rook over. I want to see my mistake. I moved down here, and he's saying I should have moved up here. Oh, and I see the mistake because it's just exactly what I said I didn't care about. When I go back here, I think Stockfish is going to say take this, and I was just going to weather the storm. I didn't really see. I couldn't see exactly what he could do, by doubling my pawns. I just thought that I I could wind my way through there. Stockfish is giving him an advantage of 2.5 apparently. I think that's what Stockfish wants him to do. Suppose. Okay, let's continue and see what Stockfish says. Oh no, it's not to double my pawns. Um, gonna bring the knight out here, and that is a strong move. The knight out here in this game is what I find actually the most problematic thing. When that knight comes up there and lodges protected by this pawn, you can't advance the pawn. It really thwarts attacks along this diagonal. But he didn't see it. I mean, that was just the luck of the draw. If he had done that, here Stockfish is saying he should take the knight, but he didn't. And then I just moved the knight up, to see what would happen. I thought, well, he might trade here. Of course, he's got to protect his queen. But instead of protecting his queen, he just thought, well, I'll go for the trade. And he's thinking probably, well, he'll take with my queen, and then his queen will be off this diagonal. But I don't have to take that at all. I just took his queen, and he resigned. So Is that a good plan? You guys want to do the intellectual training? Should we do a little bit and then we can come back? Um, it's just part of our routine here. So let's go over. I'll show you where you can get this online. It's just two paragraphs. It won't take us long, and it will have a very beneficial effect you will discover on your chess if you study literature because it is extremely synergistic. So I'm going to go over here to Gutenberg, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. He published this in 1850. Um, 1850. So let's take a look and see what Charles Dickens, see what kind of mileage he can get from the English language here. There's the picture of the book, the front picture of the book, and there's all the contents. We're not going to go through all of that. Going to just page down. It's a pretty long book and a very interesting book. And if you find it, this is just a preface. I'm going to go right down to the chapter one. Okay, so just to explain a little bit about Charles Dickens, he was a very popular writer in his time, and he wrote this book to great public acclaim. And we'll show why because we're going to look at his sentences, and you're going to see that each one is very well crafted. So, chapter one, I am born. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on a Friday at 12 at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike and I began to cry simultaneously. In consideration of the day and hour of my birth, it was declared by the nurse and by some sage women in the neighborhood who had taken a lively interest in me several months before. This is a little bit, we'll see, but it sounds a little bit cynical, right? Um, before there was any possibility of our becoming personally acquainted. First, that I was destined to be unlucky in life. And secondly, that I was privileged to see ghosts and spirits. Both these gifts inevitably attaching, as they believe, to all unlucky infants of either gender born towards the small hours on a Friday night. Okay? Um, I don't know about you, but I got my delta up really high doing that. Like my delta going up really, really high, and if you look at it, my theta, my alpha, and my beta got all scrunched together, very well synchronized, and with the gamma way down below. So without any more ado, I think we can go back now to Lichess, and I think that was worth it. I think that was an extremely valid experience. And okay, I don't have any challenges, so I'll play one more game, just throw myself out there. Hopefully, our Serbian friend will come with another game to analyze, but otherwise we'll just go over here and play a game. So far, so good, right? Uh, just gonna test this out, make sure. Um, this is just I like to write Hioklu just as a kind of a test. Okay, yeah, that's working fine. Okay, go back here to the lead chess. And okay, we're going to create a game. And, okay, another casual game. Oh, he's back. Great. Zoro's back. Okay, let's do it. I can cancel this game and just take myself off the. Yeah, I'm not even up there. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so chess games and Soro actually helped me to figure out how to get these games imported the other night. So this is quite easy. I just go here, I view. Oh, let's look first what this game is. Adolf Anderson versus Jean Dufresne. The Evergreen Party. I've heard of this game before. I think I saw this in a book at one point. The Evergreen Party. I know this one. Yeah, this is good. This is really, really good. An Italian game, Evans Gambit, Pierce Defense, 1852. Very famous one. Is this the one where he sacrifices his queen, like really on, or is this the one where he sacrifices a bunch of pieces, like right up the middle? I think it's one of those games, right? Trying to remember. Yeah, is it where he sacks his queen, like right at the beginning, over in the right hand corner? Because oh yeah, most of his pieces right up the middle. Yeah, this is an excellent game. Wow, this is amazing. He just like starts moving them all up through the middle to get an excellently planned checkmate. I remember this. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to the Lichess. Go back to the Lichess and put this thing into. It's called import a game. Uh, create a game. Oh, it's in chess tools. So import game. And okay, I'm going to request a computer analysis, and now I can just paste the PG in here and import the game and see what it says. Oh, now that's an interesting. They didn't have this back in their day, but I think this is. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see the board and all of the. How do I get this? It's kind of hard to adjust exactly in Lichess. I want to get the board and the. Okay, there we got it. Now I got the board and the graph completely visible, right? Um, so yeah, and we're going to be analyzing this with the brainwaves. Check out the delta, especially as we go through this. Um, the delta should ride up high and on top, really strong when I'm getting some insights. So I was just saying they don't have the this back in their day. And it's quite revealing. Both players were playing really good right up through the opening. And then right here up to this point too, it was very even. And then it looks like Anderson like gets this huge advantage. And then it comes down all the way down back to 0-0 and then just shoots up again. But if I remember it right, there was just so many sacks and attacks and sharp angles here that I think his opponent was a little bit bewildered just trying to respond to all this stuff and probably was oblivious that he was ever whether he was ahead or drawing. I don't think he had any idea. So this is a king pawn opening. I believe is this the Evans? We just saw that, didn't we? And they said it was Evans. Um, anyway, so when they bring the knight out there, is that the one that's called the Evans? Is that why they're referring to this as Evans? They bring the knight out. Um, anyway, the knight comes out attacking the pawn, and oh, it's not. It's not for that reason. Um, yeah, I don't really know what. Well, anyway, it's just you don't have to know all the names of the openings. It's the principles that are the most important. So they're basically vying for the center right now. The knight comes out getting ready to castle, attacking the pawn. Black has to respond somehow to this, and it's usually good if you can get your opponent responding to what you're doing because that limits his freedom. If he's constantly responding to you, it normally limits his freedom. Although I've seen many games where I'm playing moves and he's responding to them, and I'm just keep giving him the very best move with his responses. So it doesn't always work, but it's usually a good idea to force a move from your opponent. And there, Do you notice the bishop, the knights? This is an important thing to remember in the openings. This knight's way over here. This knight's way over here, but they're kind of like intertwined and they're interplaying each other because the center is the most important place in the board. And you see how they're counteracting each other on these two squares. So when you got these two knights in those opening positions, always remember that they are interacting with one another. And then you don't have to calculate so much. You don't have to say, well, if I move here, he's going to do this. And you just remember that those knights are interacting. They're symmetrical across there. Okay, so he's getting ready to castle, and he's also getting a very powerful attack on this pawn. That's kind of a traditionally weak pawn for black. Black does the same thing. This is a maybe this is why they call it the Evans. Is that why they call it the Evans? Because he does this pawn sacrifice. It's a very interesting sacrifice. It looks like you're just losing a pawn, but there's a reason for that, right? It gives this bishop chances to come out in different ways. I believe that's why they do it. And also, yeah, I guess just positionally, to take this pawn, black has to move into a slightly worse position. So he takes the pawn, but he doesn't go suddenly one piece ahead. He goes back even. He actually lost a little bit by taking the pawn. Did you see that? White was a little bit well, no, he didn't lose a little bit. He gained a little bit because he went down toward, in the black direction, but he didn't gain an entire pawn. So now that's interesting, right? I guess that's why they do it, right? Because you come up here, whether it's the knight that's there or the bishop, you come up there, he moves out, and then suddenly you got this pawn thrust protected by this pawn. Yeah, Evans' gambit is picking up the pawn for. Yeah, exactly. You're going to get fast development out of this because he takes the pawn, but then you attack him, and then this pawn is the supporter for your advance up into here. And you had to give up a pawn to do that, but you're going to get a really strong center out of this, plus development. Look at that. And wow. So now, he would love to take with this pawn, but he can't because the pawn's pinned. He can take with this knight, and then this knight takes, and then the queen comes out. And things are looking pretty strong, after that. Let's see what happens. Okay, so White just said, I'm going to just gambit whatever because I'm going to get my king out of that pin. If you want to take the pawn, you can go ahead. I'm going for development straight ahead. And you can do that. Who really cares if you lose a pawn or two as long as you've got like a really good game after that, right? Everybody's so worried about, how many pawns do I have? But it's only the opening. So, go for development. It's a lot more fun, I think. So, moves us. Oh, that's interesting. Black says, "Well, I don't want to trade you. If I trade you, who knows? You probably just you got something up your sleeve, and you're gonna, if I trade you there, maybe the queen comes, and then the knight gets developed. Um, don't know exactly what White would do, but it's gonna get that pawn back really quickly. Probably developing his knight at the same time." Okay, so Anderson is an attacking player, and this is really strong in a lot of games. If the queen from its original position can come right out here, this bishop very often can come out here, and the two moves in conjunction go against that weak pawn right there. So black comes out here protecting the pawn with his queen, and also getting his queen out into play. Anderson's got a sharp move right there, and you can see why. Black needs to castle, right? Or at least get a knight out into this position because, I mean, he could take the pawn, and then if the knight takes the pawn, and then black takes the pawn, um, he still doesn't lose his queen because the rook can't come over yet because it's not protected. But if the bishop comes to here and then suddenly, he's got He's going to have his queen and his king on the same file in the middle. So he didn't take the pawn. He came over there, which that looks like a kind of a strange move. He just, I guess he, it's not so strange actually. It's his own, and well, and that's why he didn't take the pawn too, because if he takes with this and then he takes with this and then his king's going to be really subject. You see, the queen has to stay protecting this pawn. That's why that explains the previous move and that move. And now Anderson, just like I was talking about, he sees the open file on the king, and he doesn't really know how that's going to get open, but just positionally, it looks really good idea to develop a bishop of a rook against there. And here, Anderson came out there because once again he's trying to remove this knight and get an attack on the king, and he also has to get his rook off the back row. Oh, so I guess Black is saying, well, you did that, so I'll do that to you. If you take me, I'm gambiting a little bit, but I'll have a strong attack on your queen afterwards. Oh, and then Anderson takes with his queen instead of with the bishop, and then the rook swings over, attacking the queen, which is a really edgy way of playing. The queen can't take the bishop because of the knight. It can't take the rook also because of the knight. The queen can't retreat on this file. It could go here. It can't go here because of this. If it goes here, though, um, doesn't look too good. Like this bishop can swing back, attacking it, getting attacked. It's hard to analyze all of that. But let's see. Let's see where he moves it. So he brought it back there, and just like I was thinking, it looks like a strong square for the bishop attacking down against the king, and at least the queen was not there. That had now had to move out. He would have lost the tempo if he had gone over there. So it was good that he moved over there. And now he moves the knight off. That was one of his mistakes. Stockfish is saying at this point that it would have been better to bring the queen back, but Anderson has got the idea that he wants to get an attack going here, and he figures I'm going to connect my rooks and get my knight off the back rank. My queen is safe for now. I'll let her sit there. And now Black maybe should castle. He's got his king. He just sits his king out there, and I think he does that because he's thinking, well, if this pawn advances, I can take with either pawn, and the two pawns protect each other quite well. He's not really worried about this file onto his king, and he's just going to continue to castle. Um, Stockfish, though, is saying, look at right there. You see, I went back so you can see what Stockfish is suggesting. Stockfish is saying, castle, castle, but he didn't. He moved the bishop out. And now Stockfish is saying the best move would have been to bring this pawn up, but he didn't do that. He moved the queen there, and that's like a huge mistake. Huge, huge, huge mistake. White's ahead by 5.7 now. Black takes the pawn, and he's got his bishop lined up now against the queen. The queen moves off. Players don't normally do that. They don't always do that, but when they've got an attack, discoverable attack against a queen, it's kind of natural because it's hard to analyze everything. Instead of sitting there winding down your clock, it's kind of good to just get them out of the discovered attack. This was a more difficult discovered attack though because the knight only had one place to go to attack the queen, which was over here. And from that position, you can take that, but it would just be a trade. But anyway, he got his queen out, and that was actually pretty good move because you can see the Stockfish came back a little bit toward the black position. And there's the first sack right there. And Stockfish says, "Well, you shouldn't have done that. I'm going to drop you down really far, like almost down to a draw." But Anderson is a cagey player, very, very tricky player with a lot of psychological powers. And he's saying, "Well, I'm ahead. I'm going to sack that. I'm going to discombobulate his brain." And look at that. That wasn't even a sack, was it? Because he should have castled. Suddenly, Anderson figured out a way to open that file, with that sack. Just go back to see how that was. So I'm going to click back so you can see the sack. So the queen goes over, and now there you have it. The knight comes down, checking the threatening the queen and checking the king at the same time. Black has no recourse except to take the pawn. And then when the pawn is retaken, the file is open. And if nothing else, he's going to win back the knight that he sacrificed. And now Anderson is thinking, well, I'm just going to get I'm sorry, with Black. Black is thinking, I'm going to get an attack on this file over here. He's going to take my pawn, but who knows, I'll get something going here. Um, this looking pretty strong too for Black because you see the bishop over here can take this knight, and now this pawn is pinned by the rook. So if this knight, if he takes this and then this knight swings out to some position, I don't know exactly where he would go, but maybe he would just, well, he would, I don't know if he would take there, maybe, but then it's opening up some lines on the king. So Anderson now brings a rook over. He doesn't just continue with this attack, fleeing himself out there like, oh, I'm winning the attack. I'm going to just start sacrificing more pieces. He does now the really smart thing, builds up more power in the center, brings a rook over. And I've seen this game before, and you're going to remember, you're going to see why, how powerful that rook is. I think that if I remember correctly, that's the rook that delivers checkmate very soon. And oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So I was talking about this bishop against the knight, but it's much more direct. It's just like the queen can take the knight right now because the pawn is pinned by the rook. He takes a knight, threatening checkmate. So that's looks like a very very powerful move. Yeah, like Zoro is telling me, silent but deadly. It doesn't look like much, right? But Anderson, why did he do that? He sacrificed a piece. He's thinking a lot. He's not just making random moves. When he moved that queen's rook over there, it was because he was seeing everything that's going to happen now. And of course, he saw this pin. Of course, he saw that he was going to lose that knight. And there you go. Wow. Um, this is incredible. He's one move away from getting checkmated right there, and now he sacks the rook. Uh, the knight takes it, and that was a double question mark. But anyway, Black is thinking, well, I'll take with my knight. What can he do? He can take he can take me with the pawn, but then if he takes me with the pawn, I get the checkmate, right? So Black is thinking he's in control here. He's protecting his king against any more attacks on this file. And but watch what Anderson does now. I don't know if you can see what's going to happen here, but this is basically the end of the game, and the white line just goes like straight over with checkmate. It's a forced checkmate now. Like I got the thing on the graph here. It's a forced checkmate in 3. Can anybody see it? It's an amazing checkmate. I think maybe one of the most beautiful checkmates of all time because he's getting threatened with a checkmate himself, and it's hard to even see how this is going to happen. But if this was a chess problem, and they told you checkmate in 3, I think you would know by intuition you got to check, right? To get the forced mate, you got to do the check. So the only check I see is there, right? And so let's click and see what Anderson did. Yeah, there he sacks the queen. So first he sacks the knight, which is not really a true sack, but then he sacks the rook, then he sacks the queen. The king didn't have any choice there because you see if he had moved over here, the queen would have just taken the knight, and that would have been checkmate because of the pawn protecting the flight square. So the king has no danger. Now you see a very, very deadly, a very, very deadly discovery on the king. But it's not like so automatic. You got to still know how to play this because if you make the wrong move, you're down, you're almost checkmated yourself. If the bishop's got to come here or it's got to come here. This looks kind of good because it's not being threatened itself, but don't worry about that on a double check because he's got to move his king. So if you come out here, you're going to force his king over here. And that could be good in a sense because then you got this check and his king comes back over here. And then, you could come back out here getting a check, winning the queen. But I don't think he wants to win the queen right now. He wants to get checkmate. So if he comes over here, black's king is going to be forced into this position. And then the bishop can come down here. Oh, you don't want him to go over here because, yeah, you can. He can go either direction, actually, because look at this. Just like we talked about before, when the bishop comes down here with the king sitting here, his flight square is covered by this pawn, and then that's going to be checkmate. But I think it's checkmate on the other side too. Let's take a look how it's played now. Okay, it's check there. That's his only move. Check there. The king goes over there, and that's checkmate. And I'm just wondering, suppose the bishop, in this case, moved in the other direction. Um, just kind of wondering. Like I thought I was seeing a checkmate there too, but we'll see. Um, oh, now it's checkmate in 8, but it's not. It's not nearly so good as the other because I guess black has some more resources here. Oh, the king doesn't have to go back. That's why the king comes out. If the king went back into here, I think it would be, yeah, that's like I was seeing. I was seeing a checkmate in 2. The same thing. Bishop comes down, and then the bishop or the pawn on this side. The bishop or the pawn will checkmate on this side. You want to see that the king goes over there. The bishop comes here. The king can only go here, and that would also be checkmate on this side because the pawn is protected by the bishop. But I didn't see the king doesn't have to stay back on that back rank. When the bishop comes over here, the king comes out here. That's a great resource, and now they say it's checkmate in 7. But if it was me playing this against a good player, I think black would just escape. So it was much better if sacks the queen, king takes. Now the bishop should go over here. No, bishop doesn't go over there. Bishop comes over here. And now the king just has this one place to go, keeping because the king can't come out here. Suppose he went over here though. Can he do that? I mean, what happens here? He comes over here. Suppose the king comes out here. What happens? Now it's checkmate in 1. That's even more amazing, isn't it? Look at this. Right there. That's checkmate. That's checkmate right there. This is an interesting checkmate pattern for those of you that have never seen this before or have never been very much aware of it. 2 bishops command an entire square because this bishop cuts through. But in this case, it's not the 2 bishops that are on this square. Well, they're kind of like on that square. The rook is covering this part of that square. So this bishop and this bishop control this part of the square. And then the rest of the square where the king can move to, the king can move anywhere in a square around it, are all completely covered by, already completely obstructed by his own pieces. So that's enough. The bishop there, together with this bishop and the rook, are enough to deliver the check there. So checks in every direction, and it took a lot of calculation um, to have seen all that. And you can be sure that Adolf Anderson saw it when he brought his rook over there, because he knew that he was going to lose the knight here and be subject to checkmate. But he had all of that calculated. That's an amazing calculation. Um, I think this game is considered one of the most beautiful at all time because of all that calculation. And a lot of people are calculating like I did, the king staying on the back rank. But when you start to see calculating, if when he's checked he comes up over into this white square or up into this white square, and you're calculating all that and seeing that you still have the checkmate, it's pretty awesome. um, just totally incredible game. uh, so check that, check that, check there, check there, and that's checkmate. On this side you have to take with the bishop, not with the pawn, because if you take with the pawn the king comes out, but that's checkmate. So once again, our friend from Serbia comes through with one of the most amazing games of all time. It was great, and hope you enjoyed that. Okay, tonight we did a lot of things. It was the 14th day of Christmas. We had great fun doing a great game. Actually, won one game playing it at Lichess in real time. We got all the brainwaves. We read a little bit by Charles Dickens, and right now I think I've got like the winning recipe for, for Twitch. I think this is just going to go flying now, and we're going to have great success with a lot more viewers. We're just trying to break through right now. We're trying to break through the algorithm, because if we had the viewers here, lots of people, chatting and interacting, we already have everything we need. But the problem is the the algorithm is not like bringing the viewers, but soon we're going to crack that algorithm. It's just kind of like a little bit like the lottery. One thing leads to another. Stop back tomorrow night. If we get a little bit more force, we'll just cross over that threshold where we start to tweak that algorithm in our direction, and this is going to be a lot of fun and very educational. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you enjoyed, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, have a good night. Lots of fun. To you too. Bye bye.